Hey everybody, welcome back. And it's been a couple days since I've come online, and it's late on Friday night, but wanted to come on in and speak about my week and just some things that I'm continuing to learn as I go about myself, about this process, about our minds, about our nervous systems, about what it is to be in these highly sensitized states. And so unfortunately, I think I posted it. My last post was on Sunday night, and Monday morning, I woke up. I was having my typical rough mornings, and just the stuff that we have in this. And got a call from my little brother that somebody in my family had passed away suddenly, and it was an in-law, but I have a very large, close family, and he was real shook up and said, "Can you come in?" And I live about an hour away, and and I said, "Sure." I just said, "Sure." And part of the promise I've made to myself in this, when I can, is that if I can say yes, I'll say yes. That doesn't mean I'm going to go 100 miles an hour. It doesn't mean I'm going to engage my life to the extent that I used to engage my life. It's not even possible. It not only is it not possible, I don't want to engage my life to that extent. Going 100 miles an hour, blowing and going, playing hard, working hard. Yeah, that was fine. But and that got me to 49 years old. But I don't think it's going to take me the rest of the distance. And so my point in bringing all this up is that real life stepped up this week, real life stressors. It was like I said, it was an unexpected loss in our family. It was there was certainly no time to be prepared. And so you just, you do what you have to do. And I remember getting in the car and I just said to God, I know you're bigger than my nervous system. And I pray that I can have the strength and fortitude to show up for these family members that are going to need me to show up. Now, I don't say this to say, just pray harder. Believe me, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying this to say if you just said the right thing and asked the right way, God will take away your pain and bind your anxiety. I'm not saying that. I promise. I'm not, I would not further gaslight any of you in that regard. That said, I think what helped me were a couple things. One is I'm in a little bit of a different place in my recovery, right? So I have to give that a lot of the credit, that there's been some healing along the way. And I know people that are either tapering or they're having a horrible time tapering, or they wonder if they're going too slow, or they're, whatever it is. Or maybe you're done tapering, or maybe you got cold turkeyed, or, this idea of, do we heal? I know we heal, because I lived in an acute situation that was, hour by hour. Shoot, it wasn't even hour by hour. It was minute by minute for a long time. And I'm not out of the woods. I have all the physical and mental symptoms of a really raw, sensitized, pretty beat up nervous system. But I wanted to post this tonight because I was able to do what I needed to do this week for my loved ones. Now, like I said, there's no part of me that is feeling like I got lucky. I don't think that's it. There was no part of me that felt like I just said the right prayer. I don't think that's it. I didn't do anything to, I wouldn't say I was in a window this week by any means, but I was able to do what I needed to do. Had this situation, had this death occurred in the summer of 2021, when I was so acute, or in the spring of 2020, when I was so acute, I don't think that I would have been able to do a fraction of what I've done in this week. And so, I want to be real clear about that because I'm very big, as you guys know, on mindset and attitude. Very big on that. I think they're huge factors in not just our healing, not that it's going to speed it up, but the meaning that we create in this time of pain and suffering. This goes back to my Viktor Frankl and my logotherapy points that I make about, that the mindset is probably not going to stop the thoughts from pounding and looping. It's probably not going to stop the skin from burning or the agitation or the pain or the vertigo or the floaty boaty or the vision issues or heart palpitations or the panic or whatever your one of several hundred symptoms could be. And I want to be clear about that I'm not saying mindset or attitude is going to make those things go away. I think what I believe is that the mindset being one of kind of allowance and acceptance of this is what this is. And I don't really have any control over that. So what can I control is my attitude about this, right? So, you heard me in my last videos many months ago talk about taking scary and shitty with me. That's what I did when I packed my bag and I got in the car to drive to Houston. Scary and shitty were all over me. And I just thought, God, give me the strength and fortitude to not feel better necessarily, but to be able to go through the next week with scary and shitty, like little gremlins just bouncing all over me, right? And so I wanted to come on and clarify a little bit because sometimes I think when I talk about mindset and attitude, there's a sense of I'm talking about positive thinking. I'm actually not talking about positive self-talk or positive thinking in the sense of replacing your negative, scary stuff with positive stuff. I'm talking about, yes, I do believe that it has been helpful for me at least to believe I will heal, to look for small evidences of healing, including getting into these crashes that I get into that I believe are my nervous system's way of being like, nope, not done with you yet. And so it's not about positive self-talk or replacing negative thoughts with positive thoughts. In fact, I think that can backfire because part of what we're up against in this is having this looping, obsessional mind that doesn't have any traction. Wisdom and rationality just can't really gain any traction, right? So I think when we try to replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts, that's in a way, kind of thought stopping, which I don't agree with. And again, you may have found that to be helpful, and that's great. I'm just saying what I have found to be helpful has been the mindset of allowing this to be my reality. And what I'll say to myself is, I'm in a heightened state. I'm in a really highly sensitized state. My nervous system is really raw. And just that reality reminds me, of I have a choice. And you've heard me talk about that quote before about between stimulus and response, there is a space, right? And in that space lies our freedom to choose our response. And in that, in that choice, in that space, where we have that choice in terms of our response is our ultimate freedom. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, finding that space between stimulus and response can sometimes be completely lost to me. It feels like the response, the reaction is just automatic. And so it's a real practice to begin to be looking for that little tiny sliver of space between the stimulus meaning a physical symptom, a mental symptom, pain, whatever's getting you, cognitive symptoms. It's a challenge, and it's a practice to look for that space between that stimulus and then your reaction to that stimulus. And Viktor Frankl and so many other people will talk about that is really the only thing we have control over. We don't have much control over that stimulus. I don't have much control over what I wake up to in the morning. I don't have much control over what happens when my hormones flare. I don't have much control over what happens if I push a little too hard and I crash. But trying to continue to be mindful of looking for that space and reminding myself, that is something that I have some control over. And that's why you'll hear me talk so much in here about these strategies of non-engagement. And so when I talk, that's part of the attitude that I talk about, or the mindset is not, hey, just think happy thoughts, will yourself to be healed. No, I don't want to do that to myself or to anybody else. But, I should say and, not but. And what I'm learning from myself in this is that not engaging is really the best tool. I can have the same scary thought and have had it, and I'm not being hyperbolic. Let's say I've had it 3,000 times. There's days I feel like I have it 1,000 times a day. So I know I've had it a heck of a lot more than 3,000 times. But that same thought, no matter how many times I've thought it, can scare the hell out of me. I can find myself, before I even know I'm doing it, fighting it, checking to see if it's still there. Waking up in the morning to see if the terror, the doom, the gloom, the whatever is gonna pounce on me. Looking to see if the thought's gonna come back. Checking, right? And that's its own form of mental compulsion. And guess what? I find it every single time. So, going back to my friend Chris, the vacate fear, the guy I was telling you about, and his, he's a Claire Weeks student, self-taught student. It's part of why I really like what he has to say, because I think, honestly, I think I've said this before, I think if Claire Weeks were alive today, I think she would get us. I think she would be able to help us psychologically navigate this crazy terrain. And, my goal for myself and for everybody is I'm going to do my best to kind of, intuit, study Claire as deeply as I can and intuit what I think she might have brought to us. And what I think she would have brought to us wouldn't have been a quick fix, because I don't think that exists. But it would have been a mindset shift. And it would have been the one she employed with her thousands of people that, were highly, highly sensitized and had spent 20 plus years either agoraphobic or, obsessional and suicidal and depressed and fatigued because they'd just been battling their mind for so long. And benzos hadn't really made the scene. Valium was just coming onto the scene when Claire was kind of in the heyday of her work. It was mostly in the 60s, so it was really tranquilizers and barbiturates were kind of bigger, I think, at that point. But Librium and Valium were making the scene. How many people back then were struggling with sensitized nervous systems as a result of those chemicals? I'm sure they were there, right? And she was not a big advocate of using medications. She would actually talk about using tranquilizers very, very briefly, and she was not in favor of the antidepressants. Of course, at that time that she was doing most of her writing and talking and teaching, it was the very early days of some of the more kind of primitive antidepressants. But anyway, I got off on a tangent there, sorry. My point in bringing Claire up was because I was bringing Chris up, who was vacate fear. And I think what Claire would be teaching us, if she were here today, would be to face the reality that we are in this chemical assault that has left us very raw and sensitized. And as a result of that, facing that reality, we then have to, accept and allow that reality to be true, which I know, on a better day, it's easier to do. On a good day, I know what it is, but man, it's easy to just go down the rabbit holes, and believe that we know more about this than we do, meaning the negative of that. I'll get stuck down the rabbit holes of, oh, what if I don't heal? Somebody mentioned Don Killian. He's had a setback. Oh my God. No, like I rarely get stuck down very positive rabbit holes. Usually not my problem. Going down, wow, look at all these people healing. Look at all these people coming off the forums and the sites because they're healing and they're living their lives. I don't get stuck down those rabbit holes, right? Why? Because I'm in a state of dysphoria, which is what benzo withdrawal creates in us. And in a state of dysphoria, I'm not going to get stuck or hooked on positive stories, right? Because it doesn't match my state. But man, you throw me a negative bone and I'll be like, I don't want to look at that. And then boom, I'm down the rabbit hole. So again, if Claire was here, I think she would be teaching us her ideas of facing the reality of our situation, accepting that this is where we're at right now, and that our story is our story. It's not, it's not Jennifer Lee's story. It's not Baylissa's story. It's not, we have our own stories, which, in some ways is comforting, in some ways is discomforting in this. We want a whole lot of people, that we can follow across that minefield. I get that. And then I think she would have been employing the idea of floating through it. And the floating through it, from my perspective, is the non-engagement response. And my friend Chris, Vacate Fear, talks about this a lot. And what I find helpful most of the time is a non-engagement response. And what he means by that is not some sort of positive affirmation. It's not some sort of Pollyanna moment. It's and it's not some monologue. It's not some I'm gonna say this prayer. In fact, I had my therapist, I was talking to her the other day, and she's like, what if you said the serenity prayer when you felt the intrusive thoughts coming on? And I was like, the problem with that is that becomes a compulsion. Because basically, it's fine if I want to say the serenity prayer, right? But if I'm saying the serenity prayer in hopes that the thoughts will stop, or the feelings will stop, or the sensations will stop, then I'm using the serenity prayer as a compulsion. If I go into a body scan meditation and I do the body scan and immediately I get done and think, is it still there? Do I feel any better? I've used it as a compulsion. Okay? It's fine to pray. It's fine to do body scans. It's fine to do deep breathing. It's fine to do light exercise. It's fine. All these things are great. Okay? But if they're done and then you're saying, I did those things, why am I not feeling better? Or am I feeling better? Then you're back into the mental engagement. And so it's hard work to practice a non-engaged response to something that is as bullying and physically and mentally and spiritually devastating as this process is. And yet I think it's really, for me, what feels like kind of like pay dirt. It feels like where the money is. And so a non-engagement response could be, let it be. The non-engagement response could be, it's benzo withdrawal. The non-engagement response can be, I got it. I'm leaving it alone. I'm dropping the mic. I'm dropping the rope. Whatever it is. My friend Chris, Vacate Fear, did a segment the other day, and he talked about, the title of it was called, I remember he's not working with benzo folks, but he has lots and lots of people that he coaches that are severely impaired with sensitized nervous systems that have left them unable to work, unable to function, unable to parent. So he did a segment the other day and he called it Under the Influence. And I loved it because it was another good reminder, and it can be potentially a good non-engagement response, which is, again, it's almost like a little tagline, like 2 or 3 words that you just, when you start, when you're stuck in that background noise of the intrusive thoughts, because, when you're this sensitized, our intrusive thoughts are not typically, they can be, but they're not typically like, oh, I was cooking dinner with my family, and everything was great, and then all of a sudden I thought, what if I stabbed my kid with this knife? Yeah, that happens to people all the time, okay? People that don't have sensitized nervous systems can have thoughts like that. But the more sensitized you are, the more that thought's going to scare you. And certainly the more sensitized you are, our intrusive thoughts don't feel like discrete thoughts that kind of pop in at us. It feels like background noise. It feels like a mixture of, that's why I called it the dreeps, the creeps and depression and dread. And in the dreeps is this light, constant pounding of the intrusive thought, whatever it is. I'm not going to heal. I'm never going to heal. Look at all I've lost. Oh my God, what if I have a histamine issue? Oh my God, what if I have an oxalate issue? Oh my God, what if I have a salicylate issue? Oh my God, what if I need another MRI? Oh my God, what if I need to go to the dentist? Oh my God, whatever. Oh my God, why am I thinking that thought again? And so his idea of being under the influence, he was likening it to, and again, he was talking about anxiety, but it applies to us. He was talking about, like, if you've got somebody who's wasted, they drank too much and they're completely wasted, right? And they start drunk dialing their ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend and saying all kinds of things, and they're getting all ruminative and obsessive and blah, blah, blah. You wouldn't walk up to that drunk person and say, stop being drunk. Just stop being drunk. Well, they can't. They will stop being drunk when their body detoxes that alcohol and they sober up. You walk up to somebody who's stoned out of their gourd, right? High as a kite, smoking weed, and they're having a panic attack, and you say, stop being high. They can't stop being high. They will stop being high when their body has let go and has moved through enough, right, of that chemical, and they're able again to sober up. It's just like us. You can't tell us to calm down. Okay, you're in a crazy state of fight or flight. Calm down. We can't calm down. If we could say calm down, or somebody could tell us to calm down, it would be like telling somebody who's drunk to sober up. They'll sober up when their body lets them sober up. We'll calm down when our body lets us calm down. Now, are there things that can keep them drunk? Yeah. They could, while they're drunk, make a mess of things. Start drunk texting people and doing all kinds of behaviors, and, they can keep drinking. They can, start popping some pills because they can do all kinds of things to make their situation worse. And that's kind of how I see our situation as well. A lot of our impulses, our urges, our rages, our mixed up emotions, our distortions, our obsessions, okay? We almost have to plan for those, right? So for example, let's just say, for the sake of argument, maybe you have a better part of the day, right? Maybe you have a good hour at night or whatever it is. I believe we have to use that time not to reflect on what's going wrong, but to be almost a little prepared and say, you know what? I'm about to, at some point, I know that I'm under the influence a lot of the time by this highly sensitized raw nervous system. I'm under the influence of it. I'm under the influence of exhausted raw nerves. And when I'm under the influence of that, whether that's 24/7 or maybe, God forbid, thank God, maybe it's only 22/7, and we get those 2 hours a day. And in those 2 hours a day, we can say, you know what? Tomorrow when I wake up, my whole body and mind are going to be screaming for me to engage the thoughts, the engage the terror, engage the fear, engage the battle fatigue, engage all of these things, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remember my non-engagement response. And again, make it what it is. It can be, one of the things that my friend Chris talks about is let it burn. And I like this. Actually, that one kind of works for me, because when I'm stuck in thoughts or I'm stuck in body sensations, it does feel like an inferno. It feels like it's burning me. It feels like there is a fire, and it feels like I've got to let it be. I cannot make it go out any faster, but I can choose to not throw an accelerant on that fire. And how do I throw an accelerant on a fire of all of these intrusive thoughts? I'm never going to heal. I'm never going to be okay. Oh my God, let me read this horror story. Let me go down this rabbit hole. Those are all accelerants. And it doesn't feel like we have a lot of control over those things, because we don't have a lot of access to our wise, rational mind in this process. So the goal is to practice as much as we can, to set our intention as best we can. We're going to miss the mark. And even with the good intentions, even with the right non-engagement responses, if you start saying, well, I've been doing that for a month and I still don't feel any better, you're not doing it. And I get it, because I'm screwing up left and right because I keep checking. Well, if I'm doing all the right stuff, Jen, well, then why is this thing not leaving me alone? Because that's not the goal, right? It's like, it's like taking a drunk person and, slapping them in the face for 45 minutes to make them sober. They're not going to sober up. They might get pissed off. They might start to cry, whatever this, but there's a process that they have to go through. Now, our process doesn't take, a day with a little bit of a hangover. I wish it did. But I wanted to come on and talk about, getting kind of thrown into real life this week. I don't want to anticipate a major crash. I think that there's a possibility that could be the case, because you've heard me use my analogies before of, kind of like running marathons on a broken ankle, and this week was a marathon, and it may come back and really bite me in the butt, because I wasn't really out of my last. I don't know if it was a wave, or you want to call it a crash, or you want to call it the backlash to really pushing out over Christmas. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I wasn't fully out of the woods on that one before life kind of came in again. And, but I was reminded today of just how seductive the fear is, just how seductive the what ifs are, just how seductive the catastrophizing is. It's not because we like it. It's because it's, state drive story. It's mood congruent. And, I was just thinking a lot about Claire Weeks, and it's interesting, about 9 months ago, maybe longer, maybe over a year ago. Yeah, it had to be over a year ago. Yeah, it was almost a year and a half ago. I read the biography of Claire Weeks, and I ended up writing the author. And I found I Googled and anyway, I figured out how to try to send her a message. And I sent her a message and just said, I'm in benzo withdrawal. I know that's not what Claire was writing about, but thank you for writing her biography. She has been an inspiration to me. It is my goal to take what I'm learning from her and from her disciples and people that she's taught, and really bring this forward, because I think it could help not just so many people in benzo withdrawal, but just people who have sensitized raw nervous systems for all kinds of reasons. And it was really weird, because I was, struggling this week, right, with all that's going on. And out of the blue, this message pops up. And it's the author of that book who says, I don't ever go online. I'm very rarely, on my devices. And I don't know how I missed this from a year and a half ago, but I'd be happy to talk with you and learn more about your situation. And it was just such an interesting timing, right? Where I was I always call on Claire. I kind of see her as my Aunt Claire, and I call on her a lot. And I'll be like, Claire, tell me what to do. Claire, what would you tell me to do right now? How would you explain what's going on in my mind? How would you explain what's going on in my body? How would you explain this sensation? And I just feel that she would say, well, Jen, I can't do an Australian accent. I'll have to get my friend Sarah, who's Australian, to do it for me. But she would say, shilly shally, or she would say something along those lines like, mate, what you need to do is just face it and float and let time pass. And that's a big one of Claire's, is let time pass. Now, who the hell thought letting time pass was going to be this kind of time? Nobody in their right minds takes a pill as prescribed and thinks this is the amount of time potentially they have to spend healing. It's insanity, but I think that's what Claire would tell us. So anyway, just wanted to come on and let you guys know where I'm at and what's going on in my life. And I'm grateful that I've been able to be here with my family, and I'm grateful that that I'm still learning about myself, about the mind, about the nervous system, about iatrogenic illness from medications, about what it is to have a raw sensitized nervous system and how crazy it can make us feel and how unsettling it is, and also just the litany of stuff it can create. So thanks for listening, guys, and I will try to get back on in the next couple days. Take care.